This is the Global Broadcasting Service, serving remote outposts since 1928.
Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail.
Caramba, we have something really big for you today.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
Now then, hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
This is the DBC Pod with Phil Schoen and Jason Dodge.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's pod. This is the show for the week of March 11th, 2024, and it is a Phil's solo show this week. As you can tell if you're watching on YouTube that Jason is not here because he's traveling, but I did want to put something quickly out there to talk about the down and back trip that my son and I just did. First, a little housekeeping. Reminder, all of our social media accounts, we are on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere at the DBC Pod. And of course, our Discord server. Lots of good conversation over there, so please join in. And as Jason mentioned last week, try to invite a friend to join and get the numbers going and get some more and new and differing opinions in there. One quick note I did want to make is I see that Google Podcasts is going away. That's the podcast service that I tend to use, but everything was being ported over automatically if you wanted to YouTube Music, which has a podcast section, and we are available there as well. So if you're using Google Podcasts, you can import everything over to YouTube Music and you will find our podcast there as well. Speaking of YouTube, I did want to welcome a new subscriber, Connell O'Neill. Thanks for subscribing and hope you're enjoying the content so far. Before I get into the down and back, I did want to mention one news topic. Not going to get too heavy into it, but it is kind of big news. I wanted to be sure to at least mention it. And that is being reported. It's being talked about, but it was released on her Instagram account. I believe that the current head of Walt Disney Imagineering, Barbara Buza, is going to be leaving Walt Disney Imagineering and leaving Disney as a whole. She took over from Bob Weiss in 2021 and will be leaving Bruce Vaughn in charge of Walt Disney Imagineering overall. Bruce came back just about a year ago, on March 7th of 2023, returning to the company, and he was, I believe, Chief Creative Officer. So now he'll be head of all of Walt Disney Imagineering. In her goodbye, she sort of posted about a lot of the challenges they had during that time. Obviously, that was during the COVID years and when Bob Chapek took over, and there's a lot of stripping down of Walt Disney Imagineering, and they had to kind of deal with everything going on and do the best they could. But, I think this is, if anything, it's a signal of returning to what Walt Disney Imagineering was, with someone like Bruce Vaughn in charge, kind of more came up through Imagineering and the creativity that he brings and that sort of thing. Also, I think the timing is interesting because we're about, 5 months or so away from the big D23 event. So obviously time for him to shape that and what they're going to talk about there. And it's also sort of bringing back Bruce in charge prior to them really investing that $60 billion that they promised they would be doing. And the $17 billion for Walt Disney World, we know not a lot of that has actually been invested yet. That's supposed to come at more towards the latter part of the next decade. So this sort of sets that up. And hopefully, this is kind of a sign of that things will be moving in the right direction and we'll be hearing more exciting things going forward and kind of just getting things set up. We also know that they reduced the number of people in Walt Disney Imagineering during that time too. Hopefully now with Bruce in charge, they can bring back some of the people or hire new people, but just kind of reinvigorate that whole area and just get more people to be able to handle all the work that's going to be required of all the expansions that Bob Iger's been talking about. I think in a recent interview, he said they could build 7 new lands around the world if they wanted to. So he's obviously talking big things and big expansions. Hopefully they're getting sort of all the right people in the right chairs to be able to do that. But moving on to the main topic. So I had been talking about this a little bit before, mentioned it on Discord a few times, that we were doing a down and back trip, but that's what I'm calling it because it was basically we went down, we did something, and we came right back with my son. This was really more around a flight that he wanted to go on, and it was related to a Christmas gift for him from actually last year for Christmas of 2022. He is very passionate about airlines and flying. He wants to become an aeronautical engineer And he has this thing where he really gets into different airlines and kind of what the companies are about and the different planes they have. And he really gets into the details and, really likes to share a lot of that information, sometimes oversharing it for me. But it's nice to see the passion that he has. And one of the things that right now, he is really into this airline called Breeze, which was started up by the same person who started JetBlue. It's a budget airline, but it uses kind of all new planes and has a new way of thinking about things, and he was really interested in it. We've never actually been able to fly on it, but as part of his Christmas gift, we gave him sort of made-up certificates that said this was good for, one flight on Breeze Airlines if we could find kind of the right flight at the right price and that sort of thing. Obviously, we hadn't been able to find that for a little while since it's over a year that he's had that certificate. But Breeze just started flying in the last month or so out of one of our local airports, Stewart Airfield in New York, and it is currently going to 2 locations, Charleston, South Carolina, and Orlando in Florida, which seemed very convenient. So we thought, well, let's take a look at that and see what the flights and how we can make things work. And it turned out that there is a good option for going down to Orlando and doing a quick trip. We timed it right. It doesn't fly every day of the week, but it worked out that we could fly down on a Thursday. He actually already had school off on Friday previously, so we only had to take him out for one day, and he was coming back on Friday. And that evening, which was March 7th, there was an after-hours event scheduled for EPCOT. So we thought that could work out well, that we'd actually kind of do something and then come back. So just to let you know about the timing, it was a 10:25 flight that left out of Stewart Airfield, scheduled to land in about 1 p.m. or so at MCO down in Orlando. And then it was going to be leaving the next morning, or the flight that we were going to be on, at 7:55 in the morning. So if you figure out the hours, we really were only going to be on the ground in Orlando for about 19 hours. But it was kind of, that sort of made it part of the adventure and part of the excitement. Just so you know, for people watching on YouTube, I am going to try to show some pictures. Hopefully this works, that I'm able to kind of switch things around and, switch to the different views and it doesn't mess everything up. But it's just the picture I'm showing now is myself and my son on the flight on Breeze on the way down. I'm sure everyone will be happy to know that on the after the trip, Breeze is still my son's favorite airline. Everything worked out really well, and especially for the price. I think it was something like $42 for the flight down for each of us and $60 something on the way back. It was right around $220 total for both of us round trip. Now this is in the super basic level, so it didn't come with any bags or anything, but obviously we're only going to be there for 19 hours, didn't need a lot of stuff. And, everything was, the only drinks included, you could have water, coffee, or tea. Everything else, whether you want chips or soda or anything like that, was extra charge. But, for doing kind of a budget thing, just for a fun extra trip that we weren't planning around, it certainly got the job done. Planes were nice and new. Everything was bright. All the service was nice. Everyone was friendly. Kind of felt like everyone was a little bit more more casual, less stuffy or less formal, but still, obviously came off professional and everything. And, they don't fly everywhere and they're not flying every day and stuff like that. But if it worked out, I definitely think it's a better option than some of the other budget airlines we've done. I certainly would fly them over like Spirit or Frontier or anything like that. Overall, it was a nice experience. So obviously we got down there and had to take, the FACO rail over to the main terminal, and then we took a Uber to get to Walt Disney World property. We were using, I believe it was the Disney Plus special rates that were going a little while ago that you could book, and we were staying at All Star Movies. None of us had stayed there. I've stayed at All Star Music before, but we've never been at movies, but it was really just about having a place to kind of drop our bags and get a few hours of sleep that night. We got notified while we were waiting for our Uber that our room was ready, so we were able to go right to that. And we were in our room, based on the picture I took, at around 3:22 in the afternoon. So a little bit later than I was hoping, but by the time we just get over there, call the Uber, wait for the Uber, it just took a little bit longer than I thought it. But we quickly changed out of our clothes that we had for the flight down and for slightly colder New York weather, changed into warmer clothes, and headed out. We were out the door by right around 4 p.m., I'd say, at this point. Now, we were only doing the after hours, so we couldn't get into the parks yet. The after hours, you can get in technically at 7 p.m. The actual after hours, where you have the park, to the reduced numbers, is at 10, but you can get in a little bit earlier. So in the meantime, we wanted to go around property, and we were thinking about a place to eat, and my son really likes Caribbean Beach Resort, where we've stayed a few times, and he was asking about eating there. So we thought we would grab something to eat at Banana Cabana for lunch, which is the pool bar restaurant area that they have over there. So we took a bus from from All Star Movies over to Hollywood Studios, and then got on the Skyliner to go over to Caribbean Beach. And then walked over to Banana Cabana. Wasn't too crowded at this point. It was around 4:30 or so. Partly because I know they were doing maintenance on the pool, that main pool area at Caribbean Beach, so maybe it was a little bit quieter because of that. But we had a great lunch there. We split a bacon cheeseburger and then order the wings, which were the guava buffalo, which were really tasty. I had a couple adult beverages. He had a virgin frozen drink and stuff, so we were both definitely getting into vacation mode and just kind of enjoying our time there and time together. After eating there, we explored the resort a little bit, went in the gift shop, and then took a bus over to Magic Kingdom, and then took the monorail. First, we took the local. He wanted to stop at the Contemporary and kind of walk around there. We saw some of the characters at Chef Mickey's, and then we got back on the monorail over to the TTC to take the monorail down to EPCOT so that we could get into the park, aiming to be there, a little bit before 7. Seeing reports that what they were doing was kind of getting you through security and getting you through the different, just scanning your ticket and stuff like that, a little bit beforehand, and then releasing you right at 7. Well, we got there right around 6:50, and they scanned our tickets, gave us our wristbands, and let us go. So we were in the park even before 7 o'clock. I timed it. We were online. There was a pretty short line for Spaceship Earth, which was right there. And my son was like, yeah, let's go on that since it's right here. We were in line for Spaceship Earth at 6:55. So for those of you with after hours tickets or thinking about getting them, you definitely get there a little bit early, and they seem to be letting you in and letting you go. As I mentioned, the actual after hours starts at 10 p.m. EPCOT closes to regular guests at 9 p.m., but obviously they have Luminous right at 9 p.m. So that 9 to 10 hour is sort of a buffer hour where they can, guests can watch the fireworks and work their way out, but also if they're in line for some of the rides with longer lines, such as, if they're doing their virtual queue return for Guardians or Test Track or something like that, it kind of helps them cycle everybody out. However, during that 9 p.m. hour, if you have wristbands, you can get on some of the rides if they're or have cleared out all the day guests and will let you in. So sort of there was this initial time when it's more or less like regular park operations from 7 to 9. But I'd let you know during that time what we did was we tried to hit up some rides that we know had shorter lines based on reported posted times, and also wanted to hit up some of the food and wine booths. The first thing we did, obviously mentioned, we did Spaceship Earth. We then went over to see Journey of Water, inspired by Moana. I think if listeners to this channel will know that we got to see that during a preview event, but that was only during the day. So this is the first time we'd seen it at night. Really pretty with all the lighting effects, and it's really easy to take a lot of photos of the kind of the area just inside, but also with Spaceship Earth with the lights behind it and stuff like that. We didn't spend a ton of time there, but it was nice to walk around and check out all the different effects and kind of just enjoy the time there with it being dark and seeing all the lights on. We're going to go to the Land Pavilion, but we were right by the Seas Pavilion, and my son asked to go on Nemo, which obviously that always carries a very short wait. So we went to do that. And after that, he wanted to explore the aquarium. He didn't I don't know, I guess he just didn't remember, because we had done this when he was little, but I guess he didn't remember that they have all this aquarium stuff. And to be honest, we spent about 30 minutes walking around the aquarium. Putting up a photo now for those watching on YouTube of some of the tanks with all the fish, and he had a ton of fun kind of trying to spot all the fish that they set in there, the different sharks. We saw dolphins, we saw manatees, and it was kind of like, it was part of the time, it was really an epitome of what I was hoping to get out of this event and out of this trip as a whole, which was just kind of having that one-on-one connection time with my son, just happened to be at Disney because that's what I know and that's what we like. But it was more than Disney. It was about having that one-on-one time with my son. And I think it was probably most explicit during this time that we spent in the aquarium. At this point, it was about 8 o'clock or so. And we wanted to get a little bit of food, or at least I did. Turned out he was still full from the previous meal. But I did want to pick up a few things from a couple different festival booths that I wasn't able to last time. So what we did was we stopped, we walked through a couple. One thing we found was that the cut through, or the pathway that kind of goes closer to Imagination that heads up into World Showcase, was all kind of, due to the construction, was blocked off. So there's a bit of a dead end there. So we had to backtrack a little bit, which was unfortunate, and cut through more into the middle. But we did stop at a couple of the booths, the Trowel and Terrace, where we picked up the soy sticky ribs. And then over at World Showcase, we picked up the nitro chilled mascarpone cheesecake with honey and blueberries and stuff like that. So these were two items that I was really hoping to try and I didn't get to try last time. They're both quite yummy. I would definitely recommend both. The ribs had a good flavor, but they weren't quite as like sticky or as kind of sweet and spicy and stuff that I was hoping for. But they were still solid. But the cheesecake was really good. If you like that kind of mascarpone type cheesecake versus the cream cheese, it was really good. Really like the honey elements on it. The only thing I would say, it is pretty kind of dense and heavy. So I couldn't finish it by myself. It's a perfect size for sharing with 2, if not 3 people. So if you are going around with people and then a couple of people are interested in trying this, I definitely would recommend it. So what we did, though, and you can see in the photo for those watching on YouTube, we brought it back to one of the central areas in the World Celebration area, the garden area that's closer to where they're building where the construction's going on. And there's a lot of tables and seating and stuff like that. So we brought our food back there, sat down for a little bit, and kind of watched some of the shows on Spaceship Earth. I do wish more of the seating was kind of aimed at Spaceship Earth. We kind of, I don't know, it felt like not all the seats were, some of them were kind of facing just into, like, they're more at counters and stuff like that. But we did find a decent spot and enjoyed kind of just having a little bit of time to do that. So this got us right to about 9. Our plan was to go to Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind and see if they were letting people in. The cast member I spoke to there said, well, they have to wait until everybody's cleared out and to just come back in like a half hour or 45 minutes because it technically doesn't start till 8 or until 10. Sorry. I'd seen different reports from other things where it seemed like sometimes they said that, but then at like 9:02 they started letting people in. But my son didn't want to wait around, so what we decided to do, we were going to go ahead to Test Track. However, on the way what we passed on the way to Test Track, though, and I'm showing a picture right now when we were on our way over to Test Track, you could see the fireworks going off. So I had to ask my son before if he wanted to watch Luminous. As you may recall from my last episode, having seen Luminous the week before, it wasn't exactly my favorite show. I wasn't crazy about it, so I didn't push it, but I was very much open. Like, if you want to see it, we'll go see it. But I'm not going to, push you either way. And he didn't really have any interest in seeing fireworks. He's not a big fireworks person. He sometimes can get sensitivity to loud noises and stuff, so the fireworks can kind of bother him. So he would much rather have just gone on rides and stuff like that. So that's what we did. But we went to Test Track, but we also went on Mission Space. He asked about, like, well, what's this thing? We've never done that before. And so we went to do Mission Space first before we did Test Track because the line looked a little longer. He wanted to do Mission Space. We did the green because I said that was a little less intense. He absolutely loved it. He came off saying, this is my new favorite ride in Epcot. He thought it was just great. All the buttons that you could push. I don't think that any of them actually impact anything, but he liked all that. He liked the visuals you got of going around the Earth and the different things you could see, and he just had a blast with it. So then we did Mission Space. So we did Mission Space, then we did Test Track, then we did Mission Space again on the way back to check out Guardians. And then he noticed on the way out that there's this play area in the post-show area of Mission Space. And it's kind of one of those, like you might see at McDonald's or something like that, but much more grandiose, much larger, where you can climb through tubes and stuff like that. And he really wanted to do that. So he was spending a lot of time in there. And I must admit, at this moment, I was getting a little antsy, I guess, for lack of a better word, because I felt like we weren't necessarily getting the best value out of our after hours ticket by spending time in the play area and the mission space post show area. But this is what he wanted to do. So I was trying to keep calm and kind of just let things roll off. And, we had already gotten a decent amount done anyway. There's still plenty of time left in the party, so I wasn't too worried about it. But I did want to hit up some of the kind of the more heavy hitters and stuff like that. So we went over, after doing that, we did go on to Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. There was some crowd. It didn't take too long. It probably took us about maybe 10 minutes or so to get to that first loading area, which they really tried to cram people in. I was a little surprised by this. They kept saying, more people to come in, please move up, like more friends to come in and stuff. And I was like, but, with it being the party and stuff like that, I didn't know that it felt more crammed than it ever had, even during the normal days that we've been there. So that was a little surprising. And then when, you go from one room to the next, people are kind of jockeying for position, and some, my son got bumped and we got separated a little bit, and, that kind of got him a little upset, or, kind of saddened a little bit. He just didn't like that. And as a fan of it, he just felt overcrowded and kind of claustrophobic a little bit. But we did do the ride and we had a good time. We got a new song for us. We got Conga, which was definitely enjoyable. I still say September is probably my favorite, but this is probably number 2 of the songs we've had. I asked him if he wanted to ride again, but he said he was done. I think it was just the whole experience with the crowds and stuff that he had enough of that. I'd kind of been talking to him. I was like, oh yeah, we could do this ride a couple times, that ride a couple times. He seemed to just want to do things for the most part, one at a time versus doing things in repeat. Again, not necessarily maximizing the time we have for the after hours party, but this is what he wanted to do, so I was following his lead. After Guardians of the Galaxy, we stopped at one of the snack booths, picked up popcorn and water and ice cream, and I think he got a soda. And so afterwards, it was kind of funny. I think the next day he mentioned, he's like, Dad, I think I'd like to do an after hours party again. I really enjoyed it. I was like, oh, that's good. He's like, yeah, the best part was that you could just walk up and take water and soda and ice cream and stuff like that. That was great. That was that was the best part of the party. So it is a small thing, but it obviously carries weight with some people, and it's just nice to get some benefits. I know in the past we talked about some of the other after hours events, and that was a critique of Jollywood nights, that everything was an upcharge, like any food, nothing was included, versus say the Halloween party, which has trick-or-treating, or the Mickey's Christmas party that has the cookies and stuff like that. So those small things do carry some weight. So that was kind of one takeaway for me too. So we stopped that, and then on our way up to Remy's to go ride Ratatouille. That was one of the other rides that he said, I said, well, do you want to ride, like Remy's or Frozen or whatever? And he said he wanted to ride Remy. One thing I will say is they have a DJ out at this after hours event, which I know they're trying to make it kind of a bit of a party atmosphere. And I'll get to that a little bit later with some of when I got the survey about the party afterwards. Personally, I wasn't really a fan of the DJ. It definitely got loud at times too. My son had to cover his ears at times. And, sometimes it wasn't bad. They were kind of mixing in some Disney songs, just maybe with like more of a dance mix or whatever. But sometimes they were just playing regular like dance music. And I remember hearing like Little Boo Thang and stuff like that. And that just didn't feel like it fit at EPCOT. I'm all for kind of changing things up and doing some unique things, but make it more appropriate, I think, to the park. So maybe it's more just remixes of classic EPCOT music, or kind of like the EPCOT Forever type soundtrack or something like that. I don't know. But like I said, I'll get to it again, but that was one of the negative feedbacks I gave in the survey, was I wasn't a fan of the DJ and what they were doing. On the way up, we did pass some PhotoPass photographers. Son's wasn't in the mood really for photos. Sometimes he feels like, I guess when he's initiating it, he likes taking photos, but other times he's not a big fan of it. But over in the UK, they were doing the one with the lantern that had Tinkerbell in it. And so I did that one. But my son did not want to participate in that one. I was trying to get him to do it, and he was joking around with the cast members trying to get him to do it and stuff like that. And he was kind of joking around with her, which it was a fun exchange and stuff, but it was just kind of interesting that he just had no interest in this photo. But I was trying to get one because it's not one that you always see out. And if it is, it usually has a long line. Here it was like, I think we had one person in front of us. That was it. So then we went up to Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. And it was posted as a 15-minute wait, but it literally was a walk-on. We had nobody in front of us. We went through, there were other people on it, like they did put other people in our car and stuff like that, but it was a walk-on, which that's definitely a benefit. Even when it's if you get it with a low line, it's still going to be, 25, 30 minutes, or you're going to have to use your Genie Plus on that. So seeing rides like this and Frozen and stuff that are virtual walk-ons is definitely a really nice feature of these parties, especially the one at EPCOT, and definitely is a selling feature. And I think when I get to the review, that'll be a key component of how I view these and kind of how the experience has, if it sort of confirmed or denied some of my thoughts going into it ahead of time. After this, we headed down towards the Land Pavilion because the other ride that he did ask to go on was Living with the Land. He mentioned about doing that and Soarin', but at the end he decided he didn't want to do Soarin', but we did do Living with the Land. It was nice to see that. Obviously, that's one of our favorite rides. It's one we usually do multiple times. They added a number of little scenery things. I think it's just for the Flower and Garden Festival, but I wouldn't mind if they stayed. They weren't, too obtrusive, but there were certain areas where stuff that was clearly, related to Snow White or to Sleeping Beauty or things like that, related to the stories, just little set pieces that were kind of fit into the different garden areas. And obviously, it's always nice to see all the different garden areas. One thing I noticed, which I don't recall having seen in the past, is where they have all the heads of lettuces. Usually they have it so they do the different colors between green and red lettuce to make the Mickey head. This time at the top, they were using it to spell out EPCOT, which I thought was fun. So it's always nice to see the little changes that they have, with obviously with the plant life and stuff like that. It's like every time you go on it, things are a little bit different. After this, he did want to go do Test Track again. His goal was he really wanted to build a car that would kind of set the record for most power and stuff like that. So he was going to try a different technique this time. He actually had a higher score the first time we did it, but it was still fun, and that's definitely a fun ride. And it's another one that we did have a little bit of a line here, just like, I guess, basically getting into the next room. So you kind of had to wait for the next group to finish. So still for Test Track, that was, like nothing. But it was probably the longest wait we had between that, and then afterwards there was a little bit of a line. There was literally nobody waiting to get on when we got off, so I don't know if maybe it went down for a little bit and there was a little bit of a backup. But still, it was, it seemed long after literally walking on Remy, but it was probably 10-15 minutes tops. After this, we did stop by the gift shop to pick up a puzzle to bring back to the rest of the family that wasn't able to join, and we decided to leave. Then it was around 12:15 a.m. Obviously, the party goes to 1, but we had been going, since, I think we left the house around 8:20 in the morning. So it was a pretty long day with the travel and everything. We knew we had to get up early. And I didn't want to be there to the very last minute and then worry about just missing out on a bus or something like that. I wanted to be a little bit ahead of it. So this seemed like a good time to go. And we were back in the room just about at 1 a.m. Getting settled down. I took a quick shower and getting, into pajamas and stuff like that. It was about 1:30 that we, were settled in and falling to sleep. Of course, my alarm was set for 5 a.m. And our Uber was scheduled to pick us up at 5:45. My son was very excited that our Uber driver this morning, it was in a Tesla. He's also into different cars and stuff like that. He likes Tesla and the story behind them and stuff like that. I don't think he maybe gets into all the different ramblings and political stuff related to Elon Musk, but he does like the car, and I got to admit the cars are pretty neat, and it was a fun little last kind of special thing that kind of lined up for him. So he got to fly his favorite airline and drive and be in an Uber in his favorite car, so that kind of made for a great day. Our flight was slightly delayed leaving, and we also had to stop through in Charleston on the way down. We landed in New York right around 2 p.m., had, about a half-hour drive or so after we got out. So we were in our home, but right around 3 p.m., I think, and stuff. So, we left at 8:20 the previous day, and home at 2 p.m. So I thought I'd give some overall review and takeaway for the After Hours. Overall, I thought it was a pretty great experience. I know EPCOT probably isn't the perfect park for maximizing, the number of rides you can get on because everything is so spread out. There are quite a few in that World Discovery area. If you want to do Mission Space or Test Track, and obviously Guardians is there, but then you kind of have to walk all the way over to get to World Nature area or go into the back, and you have Frozen and Grand Fiesta on one side and then Remy on the other side, but there's not a lot kind of in the middle. But it's still nice to just walk around EPCOT at night, when it's cool and it's not packed. I was there just the week before when I was able to go with Zach, and it was pretty crowded walking through World Showcase and stuff like that. So it's nice to have a lot more openings. I will say it wasn't dead. There were people there, but it wasn't packed. It wasn't normal. It's definitely a much, much lighter crowd than during the day. And I do think that's what a lot of people are doing, because like I said, a lot of the rides had very little waits. People were just enjoying the low crowds and walking around EPCOT. So I thought that was interesting, that kind of what the park is known for during the day, which is not just rides, but it is kind of experiencing things and walking around the countries and stuff like that. People were still doing that, even though they were paying for an after-hours ticket. One thing that stuck out to me was, I know when we passed Rose and Crown, there were people because that was one of the dining locations that's open, but obviously you still have to pay extra for it. But they were in there drinking beers. I saw people doing shots and stuff like that, which I don't know. It kind of struck me. It's like, that's what you're using your time that you're paying this extra money for this After Hours. But the EPCOT one is a little bit cheaper than the other parks. So it's basically the same as a day park ticket. And as you can see, we got quite a few done. We did, I think, 11 rides in total, or, experiences if you count like Journey of Water and the aquarium and stuff like that. So you got a lot done with like low pressure. It's really nice to experience the parks without having to worry about virtual queues, without having to worry about Genie Plus or individual lightning lanes. And still everything is basically like a walk-on, or you just wait like everybody else, but it moves quickly. Like even with Guardians being a standby, yeah, there was a little bit of a line, but it was more or less continually moving. And so it really didn't feel like that much of a wait at all. Obviously, being able to walk up and get the sodas and ice cream for, quote-unquote free is nice. And I know they do the maple popcorn in Canada, but I still think adding something a little bit more unique might be special. And I do think that's one of my, I don't want to say critiques, but ways that I think the EPCOT one specifically could be better. Obviously, like in Magic Kingdom, they're doing the special fireworks show, Enchantment. So you get another kind of unique thing going that you can only get by going to this After Hours event. Here, there really isn't anything that can only be had here other than this, Guardians being a standby. There's a couple characters out, but it was Mickey, Pluto, and then Chip and Dale were with the DJ. So maybe adding some more rare characters or some like unique entertainment. The only unique entertainment was the DJ, which I didn't like. I thought was a distraction versus adding to the event. So that's kind of my biggest critique of it, is that I think it's really great way to experience the park with lower crowds, but adding something a little bit more unique that you can only get at the party. Though I will say one other little thing that was nice was they had the torches on in World Showcase the whole time. So that definitely added to the atmosphere, and that was definitely one of the best parts about the event is the atmosphere. But I think a little bit extra could be added. I think there's not too much else to talk about here. I definitely would do it again. I definitely, my son said the same thing. I talked to my wife about it, that, if we had the opportunity and things lined up, there's a lot of pluses to this. It's sort of reinforced my sense of like, if you're doing a trip to the area more than a specific Walt Disney World trip, doing an After Hours event or two instead of getting a couple days regular day passes, I think makes a lot of sense. You can get as much, if not more, done, and just so much less stress, not worrying about virtual queues and Genie Plus and all that stuff. And obviously, especially in the summer, avoiding the hottest part of the days. I did get a survey afterwards. I realize I'm already over a half hour, so I don't want to go too much longer. But there was quite a few questions. They said it would only take a few minutes, but it probably took me closer to 15 minutes. And it was all specifically about the event. They kind of asked us, who paid for it, or did you pay full price? Was there a discount? Like, what did you think about the pricing for it? Did you square away your arrival time when they asked when you got there? Was it in order to see Luminous? They wanted to know, like, the main reason you wanted to attend. Basically, because was it about having the free ice cream? Was it about just having a special event regardless of theme? Was it being able to do popular attractions? And you kind of had to pick, like, what was the main reason you came. So it definitely added. They also wanted to know if you had known about this, or how did you hear about this. They asked, they had text fields, which I thought was good for just like what was the most positive aspects and what was the most negative. I listed positives as being the low wait times, especially for the popular ones, and being able to ride Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind via standby. Mentioned small thing with the torches being lit the whole time. There was the band playing in Canada, which I thought was fun. Again, it's not necessarily a unique thing. It's the same band that's there during the day. And then obviously having some of the free water and stuff like that. But again, I thought they could have more unique items. The negative thing I said was the no special entertainment, the DJ that I thought was a distraction, and that there were only a couple character meets and none of them were special. So I think there's kind of a trend or a theme to my takeaways from this. I'm not going to go into it, but they did ask about how many rides you went on, which ones you went on, how many times did you get on each of them. So they really are trying to drill down into like, well, what did you do at the parties? What did you spend your time on? And so I think it's good. I think they're trying to get more into it as how much are these driving attendants? Are you coming for them? Or did you just attend because there happened to be one when you were there? And I will say this party was not sold out. So if you wanted, you could have just bought a ticket that day and come. I know some of the other ones have been selling out, usually not super far ahead of time, but the EPCOT one, not so much. So overall, I think I'll end it there. We're about 35 minutes into this review. I hope it was helpful. I hope this sort of provided some insights into like the down and back. I know the previous review I did recently about the cruise prompted at least one person to pull the trigger and booked another cruise. So maybe this review will prompt some people to try something out like this down and back. I know a friend of the show, Matt, he's been doing some of those down and backs with some of his friends. But, for those of you with families, especially if you have multiple kids, I thought this was a really great opportunity for me to have some one-on-one time with my son, for like a full day going through everything. At the same time, my wife then I think took my daughter shopping. But we're also talking about another time, like maybe my wife will take my oldest on like a down and back, just the two of them to Disney and stuff like that. So it just seems like kind of an easy thing to do for us, that everyone likes, but enables some of that one-on-one team. So definitely encourage that if that's something appropriate for your family, and definitely would encourage you to do an after hours event. I know it's expensive to add it on as like we already have our trip planned and we're going to add this as something else. But I think if you do it instead of a regular park day, especially if you only have 4 or 5 park days scheduled, it's really about the same price as an individual day. Obviously not. If you start getting out to 7-8 days, then they start getting cheaper. But there's a lot of advantages to it. We absolutely loved our time. Made for a late night, obviously. We did a lot of rest and recovery the following day, or the rest of the day we got back. But very happy for it, very thankful for it, very thankful for I'm able to do this with my son. And I think it's going to be a memory he'll have for time to come. So that'll do it for this week's episode. Should be back next week with a more standard episode with Jason's return, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of news to cover that week, and we'll get into stuff like that. But for now, hope everyone has a good night and take care.